Everyone, nice to see you. It's been, gosh, it's been a few weeks since I've been on here, so it's nice to see all your faces. I know we had a little bit of a scheduling issue today where we had accidentally scheduled it an hour earlier than it was due to be on. So hopefully, anyone who missed the actual hour that was on is in here now. So fingers crossed that you're all in and happy to see me and have a few questions perhaps in relation to Maeve or in relation to other things. I'm having a look over here. Oh, Carol says the Americans are here. Hi, Americans. Not just Americans, we have Liz as well. We have the Irish and we have the British. We've got Catherine from Stratford upon Avon. So I'm going to guess that we're probably not going to see many Australians and New Zealanders, but you never know. Maybe someone has insomnia and is up at this stage, so it's very possible. But welcome to see you all. Oh my gosh, my words are not coming out. Welcome to see you all. As you can probably hear, I've been doing a lot of teaching. Yesterday, Laura sat down with me and she started looking through the calendar, and we realized that this upcoming weekend is my sixth weekend working straight, teaching through weekends. So if I'm a little disorientated, that might probably explain it. But this is the end of my intensive teaching season until Barcelona next month. So get a little bit of a breather, get to get back and go into a totally different mindset when I'm designing. Because I've got Julia, you're here from Joe. Okay, I'm guessing that the end of that word didn't come in. But yeah, so I've been very busy. And on top of that, I've had two car breakdowns in the last 2 weeks that required the car to be towed, which was great fun. So yeah, I've definitely had an interesting 6 weeks. I've met a lot of you over the last 6 weeks between different tours and retreats and online classes. So it's actually been phenomenal to be able to meet so many people in person. Oh, we've got some Germany, Las Vegas, Wisconsin. Oh, Jordan is where you were saying from. Oh, yeah, we've got a good spread of people around, that's for sure. So how are you all getting on with your Maeve sweater? I've been watching some of the knitting that's coming through, and it's just incredible, particularly the fact that we've got quite a few new brioche knitters, and this is either the first brioche project that you've tackled or it's the first big project. So I am so impressed with the progress you've been making and just figuring it out and taking a look at how everything's going through. So it's just incredible because I know that for a lot of people, brioche is one of those techniques that sits over there and is kind of like, I don't know if I want to do brioche. So it's actually just phenomenal that you're tackling it, you're doing a sweater, and it's coming out the way you want. So that's really, really good. So yesterday, Clue 3 came out. We didn't have a live here for Clue 2, but I'll talk through a little bit about Clue 2 as well. So Clue 2 was the body, where with the body you cast on stitches the underarm and then you begin knitting the body down. So the main thing you can see in the body here is you've got this section which I call a brioche panel, which is effectively just a set of brioche stitches that the increases and decreases are happening outside it. So it's moving back and forth, but that section, the panel, has got nothing happening in the middle. It's all on each side. So when you're coming down here and it's moving outwards, it means that the decrease is happening out here and the increase is happening here. So that's all that's happening. This is very slowly moving out with one decrease on this side and one increase on this side. So it moves outwards in this side and it moves outwards in this side. And then once you reach the point where, hang on a second, am I saying the right thing? I'm looking from the wrong side. Yeah, no, it's moving outwards. And then at this point, when you meet the narrowest point, you do the opposite, where you do the decrease in here and the increase out here, which then moves it back in. So that just gives you a little bit of movement, some really interesting stitch patterns. And what it also does actually is because of the fact that you've got something that's leaning ever so slightly like this, it's creating a section with a small bit of biased fabric. And that, even though you've got no change in the stitch count, because every increase is matched with a decrease, so the stitches stay exactly the same, but because you've got one section that's going this way instead of this way, it actually narrows it in a little bit at that point. So you'll see when you lay it down that it moves in a little and out, but it's not shaping per se. It's just the fact that you have a little bit of biased section, so it kind of moves in and out. But the main reason it's in there is to just create a bit of visual interest, to make just an interesting stitch pattern as you go through, so that, as Liz is saying here, you don't lose your mind doing too much plain brioche. It adds just a little bit of interest to keep you noticing what's going on. Now, there was one question that came up from Rhonda as she was knitting through it on KnitHub. And she was asking that if you wanted to make it longer, would you add that extra length before you started doing the panel or after? And as my answer frequently comes up, it depends. And the main thing it depends on is where you want to move this panel to. So if you've got a longer upper part of the torso and you want to have this lower relative, then I'd probably put it at the start and then begin working that a little bit sooner. You could also actually, with this, because there's no actual increases and decreases, you could start it where it is. And then when you come down here, you've actually got the ability to move it in a little bit further. So you could even add at the bottom another one or two decreases moving in. So that would actually mean that you're keeping a bit of a stitch pattern or the biasing going on a little bit down further. So I think that could be kind of fun actually, to move it in and out a small bit as you go. Liz, you started the first sleeve this morning. I want to know, Liz, are you working all four of them? I know that you had one for yourself, but I know that the plan was four. So I'm very curious to see, has that materialized? Are all four moving through the Liz production facility up there, Brioche Sweaters? Barbara, yours is still a crop top, but you'll get there eventually. It's fun knitting, but it takes more time with rounds with brioche than without. That's for sure. Because of course, with brioche, because you're effectively only knitting every second stitch every round, you have to work twice as many rounds to get the same depth lengthwise. So while there's not quite as many stitches because it stretches out so much horizontally, you're knitting twice as many rows. So it is slower. It takes less time. It takes more time to reach the same kind of length because you're basically doubling the amount of rounds you're knitting. Carol, you've ripped out at least 6 or 7 times. You're at the point of moving ahead, come what will. You contend when you've done something wrong, you just don't know how to fix it. Oh, I'm so sorry, Carol. Probably like the best thing is just lifelines, where you know the point where you frequently end up running into problems. If you can put a lifeline before that, so if you go back, you can go back to that point. And there may be some things where it might be a matter of, I want to finish sweater and I live with certain things that are working up. Um, Karen, you added 10 extra rows between the ins and the outs. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. So you can see here where you've got your panel where it's moving outwards, and then there's a section here that's straight. So that's actually another really good place to add length, is you can just make this a little bit wider in the middle. Yep, that's absolutely perfect. So you see this, there's no one size fits all with this. The fact that you can put it pretty much anywhere and it's still going to work. Where Catherine, you wanted to add some A-line shaping. Where should you place the increases? Okay, so with A-line shaping, I've seen a couple of different things being done. The most obvious one and the more frequent one would be along the side. So where you've got your side panel here, just find a brioche knit stitch that's in the middle and do your increase, a double increase, working down the side panel. You don't have to, sorry, not the side panel, in the middle of the side at the underarm. But I would just do, because brioche is double, you just mark that middle stitch and then you do your double increase, probably your brioche yarn over brioche into one stitch. and you don't need an awful lot with A-line. You just want a few going down is going to work fine. I know that there was a couple of knitters were saying that they actually worked it into the side panels. So where, you know, because normally what you're doing is you're moving it over at the same amount, where you've got one increase and one decrease matching. And they said periodically they just skipped the decrease so that it didn't have too much of an impact on how it looked, but it meant that you were basically adding extra stitches to the width. So that's another place you could do it. But either of those are going to work. The one on the side is going to be a little bit more straightforward because of the fact that you can leave all the rest of the pattern the same. But the ones going down here could potentially work in a bit more seamlessly because you're working increases anyway. Um, or you could leave the increase decreases as they are and then just kind of slot an extra increase in as well. But I think either of those would probably work pretty well. Carol, you're 2 steps ahead and 1 step back. Oh, at least there's 1 step forward still. So it's not, you know, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, which would be way worse. Liz, you've 2.5 clue twos done, plus another clue one done. You put down the third one to finish number 2, and you're not casting on anything new until all 4 are completed. It's like I feel like we're going to need a lineup at Christmas from you when you actually give everything as gifts, because it's going to be epic, absolutely epic. And your first brioche project was Brutalk, based solely on the visuals. Is your assumption that the lovely waves are similar? Um, the waves in the side here, it's kind of similar, except that it's just these ones are done a much more slowly working out, whereas the other one created a little bit more of a faux cable effect because you were repeating the same thing going down. But both of them are just increases and decreases, basically, yeah. Judy, you're trying to get your nerve up to knit the sweater. You tried the scarf, had trouble, so you need a little bit more practice. Maybe you need to visit Liz. Yes, I think we all need to go visit Liz and just sit in her brioche aura for a couple of days, I think. Um, just go for it. Like, just get started. The fact that the start of this starts very slowly is a really, really big help. So it's a small section. Most of it's plain brioche. I would actually, if you are at a point where you can work brioche back and forth in rows with just the brioche knit slip-on yarn overs, then you can get started on this. Because the scarf actually moves into some of the bits that are happening down here, but the top part of this is a little bit more straightforward, and then some of those other increases start happening down here. So maybe just get started with it and keep a swatch going on the side where you can practice a new stitch as you're working through as well. Carol, you think it might be easier to change your body than adjust your sweat? You'd be surprised how easy it is to add just a few A-line increases down the side. It's pretty straightforward. It like the only different because brioche is quite a large stitch gauge, you actually aren't talking about all that many. You're probably like if I was putting A-line in here, I could say you'd probably get away with just 3 increases spaced fairly far apart going down. So it wouldn't really be a very difficult addition as you went through. Carol, you're saying you wouldn't have made it this far without the videos and the instructions. Well, I'm very glad that they helped. I know that for me, when I'm learning something new, having a video showing each stage, particularly as it's a little, you know, if because there's certain areas where the written directions can be interpreted in lots of different ways. So having a video where you see it knit through definitely makes a difference if you haven't done it before, because you're not going to end up misinterpreting it then as you go through. Melvia, your impatience got hold of you and you put it aside. Well, hopefully you can find a little bit more patience and pick it up for small little stretches up and down, kind of working through it. I think you'll enjoy it once you get into the swing of it. Kathy, what sweater am I wearing now? This is the Cree cardigan. It was last year, I think it was. It's a big, long, oversized, cozy cardigan in jas. So it's the weather's getting colder and I want to be cozy cardigan. It's a long one with a belt in it as well. Oh, there you go. Hannah has just popped up the link down to the bottom. So, but that's in terms of the sweater. The last bit on the bottom here as well is you will notice that I've done a slightly different bind off. So for this, I've done a variant on Judy Stretchy Bind Off. And what it is where you're doing a yarn over between the stitches so that it gives a bit of stretch, but it doesn't give as much stretch as a tubular bind off, because brioche is so stretchy that if you went straight into a tubular bind off at the end, what you'll find is the end will splay out and it won't hold its shape. So, but you still need a certain amount of stretch. So a standard bind off is not going to work for brioche. So I found that this particular bind off, it gave a little bit of structure, like it stretches enough that it's not going to constrict the brioche too much, but it will still give a little bit of stretch. But if you do prefer the tubular bind off, I would suggest doing a little bit of 1x1 ribbing first of all to hold it in, and then roll from there into the tubular bind off. So the tubular bind off has three different names. Some people call it the sewn bind off, some people call it the tubular bind off, and some people call it what do you call it? Some people call it the Italian bind off. They're all the same bind off, but that is what I've used for the sleeves. So if you need a demo, you'll see it there. Irina, you've been wanting to start it, but you're confused by the shape of the neckline. It's not quite a V, but it's not round either. What kind of a neckline is it? Well, it's a circular neck, but it's got a very shallow cast on across the front here. So it's a little bit closer to a circular neck is the idea. And the main reason I've got it where I wanted the increases coming down a little bit further is the neck was looking a bit shallower. If I had a true, a more of a curve in the front, what you're going to end up with that is it will mean that there'll be more cast on stitches in the front here, which will mean it will be up higher. So if I had done it up higher, I felt like it was going to be too shallow. So it ended up being a little in between the two. But if you don't mind that, then you can go ahead and do less increases and then do more of a cast on in the front, which will make a little bit more of a curve as you go through. Michaela, you found that the underarm stitches addition on the right side of the garment made a larger hole as it went from the body to the underarm, which led you to come back frog a couple of times. Um, okay, I'm not certain where you are talking about. So the underarm stitches on the right side of the garment. Is this when you joined in the body, or what? Or is it the increases coming down here? If you can clarify, Michaela, it will kind of help me kind of talk through what area you're talking about, because I'm not certain. Barbara, you're wearing the same cardigan right now. It's cozy, right? Just perfect for this weather when it starts getting cooler. Julia, I hope I get some well-deserved rest soon. I do. Next week is going to be a quiet week, a design week for sure. And Liz is your knitting idol. You're lucky to finish one project in the time she does 20. I know it's true. Mine as well, Liz. Liz, we're all hoping that we can actually work at your speed of knitting. um, so coming back over here, and maybe this is Michaela's question, but on clue 3, we're doing the sleeves. So when you're working the sleeves, all of these ones you have already, what you need is underarm stitches. So the way I did it in the pattern, in order to actually maintain the stitches, I first of all knit, or rather worked in brioche for all of the stitches, and then I picked up across here for the underarm. But as I picked them up, I put the marker for the center of it as I was going through it. Now I've also done something else here. I pick up an extra stitch on this side and an extra stitch on this side, and on the very next round I did a crease on each side there, because for me that's ended up being the most effective way of getting rid of holes for underarm stitches there. So that's why I've put those extra stitches in there. So hang on, I can see Michaela, you've jumped in there. When you cast on stitches for the underarm and work the stitches into the garment, the stitches on the right didn't come together as well. Oh, okay. Sometimes you can find there can be a little bit of a gap as you go through. My inclination is to kind of keep going through with it, and you can usually correct it when you pick up stitches for the sleeves afterwards. Part of it is just because of the way you do the cast on there, it can just end up leaving a little bit of a gap on each side. But I would suggest kind of keep going through with it. And then as you're, what I was talking about here, where you pick up stitches across the underarm, that even picking up extra there and decreasing them very quickly can help kind of get rid of that gap a small bit. Um, Liz was saying you had a large hole too, but it closed up when you picked up the sleeve stitches. Yeah, so the same kind of thing is that, like, don't worry too much with that. Picking up the sleeve, and particularly if you leave a long tail, gives you quite an opportunity to tidy it up. Judy, you're from upstate New York, and you can't wait to see me next year. Excellent, looking forward to it. Which class are you taking, or are you on a tour or retreat, or maybe you're coming into Cork? Um, Rosie, an on non-knitting question. You love accents and you try to place people. Do you do you detect a hint of Canada, USA in my past? Well, very well, and yes and no, and of the present, because my husband is American and I lived 3 years in Florida. But having an American, even though he's lived here for 30 years now, speaking in my ear continuously does definitely kind of change my baseline pattern. And these days I'm teaching so much, and it's primarily Americans and Canadians that I'm teaching. So yeah, definitely I pick up accents very quickly. So there's a part of that. Michaela, that's what you were looking for, not the sleeves. Okay, perfect. I'm glad we figured out what it was, so that you can kind of get reassurance that you know where you're going from there on. So the next thing on the sleeve is how it's shaped. So I wanted to do something a little different from what I usually do with the sleeve, which was to leave it as a much fuller sleeve. So normally when you're doing sleeves, within, start after a couple of inches, I pull this to the side. After a couple of inches across the bottom here, you will start decreasing at regular intervals going down. So what that does is it keeps the sleeve kind of shaping it right to your arm as you're going down. But I wanted a fuller sleeve that had more of a gathered cuff. And so the way that works on this is all the way down to here, it's being worked straight. And then there's decreases. And because it's brioche, of course, it's double decreases on both sides. So there's decreases being worked fairly close together going down here, and then finished with a 1 by 1 rib, because of course, because it's ribbing and it's not no longer brioche, it pulls in quite a bit. And then to make sure that the edges are stretchy and flow very nicely from the ribbing, we finish off the edge of this with your tubular bind off. So there's loads of stretch, so it's not going to be too tight, but yet it still fits the arm very well. So with this, if you did want to have something that was a little fuller up along, then what you can do instead is take the decreases that you have down here and just start spacing them out a bit more. So you just move them up. Like, you'll end up with the same amount of decreases, they're just happening a little bit further up the sleeve. Um, uh, Irina, what inspired my idea for a fuller sleeve? I suppose it was when I did the sweater, it just felt like it fitted with the sweater, basically. And I like to shake things up a bit because most of my sleeves tend to be fairly fitted. And last year, you can see this one here, I also kept, because this is kind of an over jacket, I kept it quite wide as well. So it's got quite a wide sleeve going down, and it ends with a garter hem. So again, a little bit more open, a little bit wider. So I think I might have been just going on a little bit of a thing where I wanted to have a looser sleeve up on the top, just to add a bit of variety. And I do think it works with this. For the neck of this as well, when you pick up stitches here around it, you're going to be working ribbing. But you'll notice that it looks like you have to pick up a lot more stitches than you expect, because normally when you're coming down the side of knitting, you're going to be just picking up maybe 3 for every 4 stitches as you go around. And then, so what that actually ends up meaning is you're spacing it as you're working down rows. With this one, because we're working in brioche and the row gauge to stitch gauge is a little different, you actually end up picking up 1 stitch for every single row going down here in order to have enough stitches. And then the inside edge of this is going to be tubular bind off again. So it means that it flows very smoothly from the ribbing, but it also has a nice bit of stretch. So that's how I ended up kind of deciding with the two of those, up there. Now, there was a couple of questions that we had pulled from KnitHub again. One of them, Hannah was talking about, she was knitting on the round on the body, and the yarn she had was the way it was constructed, it had a little bit more bias in it. So she was finding that her brioche was biasing, so curving to the side. Now, fortunately for her, once she actually blocked it, it meant that this just even steam blocking straightened it up. But some yarns are much more prone to others than that. If it's got, like, sometimes the twists can actually be a little unbalanced, and then when you're working in the round, it can just be prone to slanting a bit. So a little bit of steam blocking in this particular case straightened it up, and she was ready to go, which is good. And the other one we were looking at here, Renata was asking, does brioche grow? So you were asking to see if, when you're working the length, and if you should leave it at the length it is, or if it was going to grow a little bit further, if you needed to adjust for that. And that is definitely one that is going to be based on not brioche, on the actual yarn you're working with. So if you've got a yarn like a superwash yarn or a woolen spun yarn that's a little bit heavier, then when you hold it upright, and it's going to start growing a little bit. Something like this is a woolen spun, it's Blosta, and it's a lot lighter. So this is the Blosta yarn here. So you can see it's woolen spun, it's kind of got, it's a little bit airier, it's a little bit lighter. The other ones we have over here, Nua, Nua worsted, is a worsted spun, and it's a little bit heavier. Like, it's not going to be anywhere near as heavy as a superwash, but it does have a bit more density to it. So with those cases, to see if it grows, I'd suggest with your swatch after it's dry, pin it vertically, add some clothes pegs, just some small clothes pegs to the bottom, and just leave it hang. Just pin it to a board, leave it hang, and see if you get any growth lengthwise. And if you do, then you probably want to compensate by not working it as long as you would otherwise, knowing that it's going to stretch. And also, when you're measuring it, make sure you put it like this. When you steam it, like, steam it out to actually get a true feel for how it's going to behave when the weight of the fabric is hanging off it. But I do find that that's really dependent on the yarn you use, that not all ones will grow, but some of them definitely can. Um, I think that was most of the bits that I was going to talk through. If you do have any other questions, just pop them up there. I see that there was one question asking if there was a hint for the spring knit along. Well, it will be in sports weight yarn. We've decided that much. We've got a few different yarn options that we're playing with. And there's a couple, the stitch pattern that I'm kind of being drawn to, that I think could be fun. I haven't started it yet, but I'm thinking about playing with it, is Woody Wormhead's short row color work. So anyone who's tried that, I think that could be really fun in the yoke of a sweater. So that's kind of where I'm leaning towards, but I haven't started it yet. So if any of you, any strong opinions, just throw them out there, and I will take them under consideration. Won't promise anything, but I will definitely keep it in mind, because I'm at the kind of swatching and playing with things right now. But until I have headspace when I'm not teaching so much, it's very hard to really start digging into new design work very, in a great deal. But I think that after having gone through, I've worked on another project in that technique. I taught a class last month, and I'm really enjoying how it fits together and what it looks like. So I think it could be really, really fun to see in a garment. So yeah, that's kind of where my head's going. Now, I also want to say to all of you, keep an eye out next week. We've got a couple of surprises coming up. If you're on the newsletter, you'll be able to you'll be able to see what's coming, but there's going to be some nice surprises next week. The next time I'm going to be back here for a live will be November the 6th, and I'm going to have a special guest with me that we will announce shortly. And and the last thing is, of course, for the Meabh Knit Along, if you're working through, we're going to have a gift voucher for the grand prize, and 29th of this month is the date we're going to actually draw the winner. So if you go into KnitHub and you can find the finished Meabh sweaters thread, and that's where I'm going to be. That's where I'll be drawing the prize winner from. For the moment, I've got Clue 2 pinned to the top, but as soon as we've picked the prize for Clue 2 next week, I'll pin the other thread up to the top so that you'll be able to see where it is and you won't miss it. Um, I've got Judy was saying, when will you have the Kirk kits available for the sweater again? I'm not certain. I know we've got some on order with Donegal Yarns. There was a little bit of a slowdown with the mill, so it might be a little while. Having said that, I would suggest taking a look at Barak, which also makes a really, really nice sweater. It's a slightly lighter blue, but it is equally lovely, not quite as dark. Um, Catherine, definitely short row color work. Excellent. All right. You're all on the same wavelength as me, which is good to hear. But yeah, so I'm hoping to get swatching in the next few weeks once I've got a few other projects off my needles. And yeah, have fun with it. All right. I'll see you all in a few weeks' time. Well, a few weeks, 3 weeks, I think. And in the meantime, have fun knitting your Meabh and don't forget to get your finished photos up. And thank you all for joining me. Bye, everyone.